Aloha, everybody, and welcome to my channel. I've got the lovely Sadhana and Mascha with me today. Aloha, everybody. I guess we should say hello to people too, huh? Let's see, looks like Wandering Mountain Bardic Path, Jamie Kelly was in first. Tony is here. Aloha, Tony and Scott and Gerald. Elizabeth V. This is your first time to this channel. I recognize your name. Hello, Jackie Jacaranda. And I think, did we get everybody?
Elizabeth is on my channel a lot.
Okay. Hi, Kristen Louise. Andy the Wallflower. Aloha. Okay. So, hello to everyone. And if I missed you,
hi, everybody.
Namaste, everybody.
Oh my goodness. So today, let me pull out the little cheat sheet chart that was. So today, I'm gonna make myself big real quick. So today we're here to talk about the 5 elements. So in traditional Western elemental theory, we consider the 4 elements, right? And even later, or even earlier than that, the Celts had only 3 elements, right? Land, sea, and sky. And then the Greeks came up with fire, water, air, and earth, with the added 5th of quintessence or spirit, which not a lot of people even connect to the 4 elements, that the 4 elements have 5 elements. But in this case, this is a totally different system. We have fire, which leads to earth, which leads to metal, which leads to water, which leads to wood. So there is no air, and we have 2 extra ones in here that the Westerners wouldn't consider a separate element, so to speak. Right. And in the system, each one of these circles inside the circle represents one of the organs. So if you notice, the fire has the most organs. They have 4. And then as far as the elements go, all of us have all 5 elements within us, because each of the organs belong to one of the elements. Each of the channels belong to one of the elements. And when we're feeling the pulses in 5 element acupuncture, I don't know if you can see here, we're also feeling the elements in the pulses themselves. So I know that you guys have dabbled a little, but I think I'm the one that has the most training here, because I'm actually a certified 5 element acupuncturist. But what would you consider something about the 5 elements that you are interested in knowing but don't necessarily know right now? So if you have questions, put them in the chat. Mascha, I know you've had a little bit of studying with the 5 elements, so can we get your understanding of them?
Well, my understanding of the 5 elements and of Chinese medicine has actually started during my first yin yoga training, which I did. And if yoga practitioners are here in the chat, yin yoga is pretty much based on the Chinese elements, but meridians of Chinese medicine, right? And with my teachers, we kind of, when I only started learning yin and practicing yin, we were practicing classes, meridian-based yoga classes, right? So it would be like, for example, for the wood element, we will practice the class for the liver and gallbladder, right? Because we have the 2 organs that are coupled. Well, I guess 2 organs, they correspond to each element. Well, fire, of course, we have 4, as you mentioned, Jonathan. Right. And I will ask you those questions about those 2 organs that are not very known, right, in the Western world. But yeah, so that's kind of my experience as being exploring that, and of course my curious mind, because it just made so much sense to me. And roughly I describe yin yoga in a way like non-invasive acupuncture, because we do kind of lengthen all the same meridians, right? And they are the channels in the body, and while they are kind of well, I guess they're energetic channels, but they also, aren't they corresponding to to our nerve channels and blood channels in the body as well, right? Because nothing really exists in isolations. So for me, it's been really, really powerful. So where my practice is now is, well, when it comes to yoga and energetics of yoga, I practice chakras that come from, well, from my hatha yoga training, right? The 7 chakras, yet I do practice the, well, 12 meridians, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I hope it some kind of explains things, but yeah, that's kind of my understanding. That's what I know, and that's how it expands only to that knowledge. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, just to let you know, so you see how you've got liver and gallbladder. Each one of the elements has 2 organs, and each organ is either a solid organ or a hollow organ, so yin or yang, right? So the liver, which is pretty solid, is actually the yin organ, and the gallbladder, which like releases the bile, is the yang organ. So that's how those are split up like that. And then I don't know if you noticed, but each one of those also has the 5 elements within. Lots of layering.
It's so fascinating. It's so fascinating, Jonathan. And there have been many attempts to intersect the different sciences of wellness. And I hope today that we can bring some of those links together for everybody in the chat as well, too.
Okay.
As most of you know, my experience comes through chakra psychology and yoga as well, too. I'm also a certified yin yoga teacher, and I have walked hand in hand with my daughter through Chinese medicine school. And so I've been her study buddy for a long time, and her acupuncture guinea pig. I've received acupuncture for a long time. Lots of different people that I know have gone through this. So I'm not trained in any way in the 5 elements, but I have lots of questions for you today. So I hope that input is helpful to everybody in the chat.
So Kristen Louise has a question here. She says, is an element defined in these systems in the same way they're defined in chemistry, something that cannot be broken down to smaller components? I guess, yeah, but it's different because the 5 elements, so the way I always taught the 5 elements, you have the Tao, which is everything, right? And the Tao splits into the yin yang, right? The 1 becomes the 2. The 2 becomes the 3. The 3 is earth, humans, and heaven, right? And then from the 3 comes the 5 elements. And from the 5 elements comes the 10,000 myriad things, is what they say. So all things are basically the 5 elements in mixture. So different mixtures create different people, objects, beings, you know. So I guess in a way it is like boiled down. We also have in the chart here this little circle that has like sounds, seasons, climate. So each element has its own set of identifying things. So one thing that we learned in 5 element acupuncture is that like you leave the room, let the person get ready to get treatment, and when you come back in, you immediately sniff, because the smell that they've filled the room with will tell you exactly what is going on, like what element is involved or what element they are. The other thing to look for is the sound, like the sound of their voice. If they sound very weepy, they're probably very metal. If they sound like they got a lot of fear in their voice, they're probably a water type, right? If they talk and they're the types that like are always smiling and always jubilant and like, woo, that's fire. So I guess the elements broken down is that's like the base for everything is the 5 elements. So I guess that's the answer for that. I don't know. It's kind of complicated just because it is completely different systems that use different paradigms. So.
Does the ether exist within the hollow elements?
So they don't see ether.
Okay.
For them, we have chi, right?
Yes.
But it's not just chi comes in many, many, many forms, right? So like the air we breathe is qing chi. The food we eat is gu chi. The chi that you get from your parents that keeps you alive throughout your whole life is yang chi. So, I mean, there's so many different types of chi, and that kind of takes the place of the ethers, I guess you would say. So, like, it's liver chi, or fire chi, or water chi, bladder chi, you know. So, the hollow elements are there specifically to help move things. So, like, lungs, they consider solid, right? So that's the yin organ, and then the large intestine, that's the 2 metal organs. Earth, we got stomach and spleen. Water, got bladder and kidney, right? So kidney is the yin, the bladder is the yang. So whatever is the yang is the thing that moves things along, right? And the yin is just the one that like holds on to things or slowly releases our chemicals and our like endorphins and that kind of stuff. So, which ties in actually to the 2 fire element organs that a lot of people in Western world have no idea what we're even talking about. When I start talking about the pericardium and the triple burner, and they're like, "Excuse me, what?" So, the pericardium is the sac around the heart, and in Chinese medicine, it's considered its own organ. And I know a lot of people who, if they're treating the heart, they won't treat the heart; they'll treat the pericardium instead, because they say that if you can't treat the heart, because that's where your soul is in the heart, right? Your shen, your personality, your you, basically. And so they only do it through the pericardium, because by affecting the pericardium, you're affecting the heart, right? And then the triple burner or Sanjiao. I always call it Sanjiao because that's the proper Chinese name. And it translates into triple burner, triple energizer, triple warmer. And yet it's also seen as the waterways in the body, which is interesting because it's a fire element. And so the triple burner can be seen as kind of like the endocrine system. So, yeah. I have a question here from Scott. So part of my lack of knowing on these elements, still new to all this. So this is more relating to Eastern or Vedic astrology, or am I way off? It is tied into astrology. I mean, when you talk about Chinese astrology, and it's not just the animal, it also cycles through the elements. So I myself was born in the year of the wood rabbit, right? Which is funny considering wood is very active and rabbits are very passive. So it's like that dichotomy is kind of how I am as a person. But then if you look deeper into what's called the 5 elements and the 10 stems, you have not just the year, your astrology chart in Chinese medicine. Like most people in the West, they just know what year they were born. I found a website, I can't remember where, I need to find it again. Someone gave it to me and I lost it, but you type in your date of birth and location, and it spits out the elements and animals for the year you were born, the month you were born, the week you were born, the day you were born, and the hour you were born. And each of those corresponds to like sun, moon, rising kind of stuff. So the hour you were born is your personality. And even though I was born in the year of the wood rabbit, when I did my chart, it came up as a fire dragon, which is interesting because it's also the only things that can So it's interesting because fire overcomes wood, but rabbits are the only sign that can overcome dragons. So It's very complex. I've been studying this stuff for years, and I'm still barely scratching the surface. So,
Is there, Jonathan, what is the requirement for continuing professional development for acupuncturists? Or is it a self-study thing?
it's a continuing education setup. So every year I need to get 25 continuing education units. So I mean, I've taken some classes, like skincare and facials and different stuff, just to like get the numbers out. But when I was in acupuncture school itself, I actually did the track on the 5-element. Like I did all the 5-element classes and took all the clinic classes, and so I actually graduated with a certificate in 5-element acupuncture on top of the TCM. And the interesting thing about 5-element acupuncture is that it's not the same as TCM. Some of the points that they use are actually the Japanese points instead of the Chinese points. In TCM, usually it's like you feel the pulses, you figure out what's going on, you put a bunch of needles in, you let them like nap for about 30 minutes or so. Actually, I had a teacher who had extra treatment rooms, so she let her clients decide when they were done. So if they were done in 20 minutes, she'd come in and take the needles out. If she came in to check on them in an hour and they were sleeping, she'd just let them sleep. So, but it was very interesting to learn the differences between the TCM, which like you're laying there for 30 minutes, versus the 5-element, which is like you go to the pulses, find the biggest imbalance in the elements, figure out the one point that could help fix that problem. Needles go in, you get the chi sensation, needles come out, and then you go back to the pulses to see how they've switched. And you're basically chasing the imbalance around. So you find the imbalance again, figure out what the one point is that will help treat the imbalance. Needles in for chi sensation, out, back to the pulses. And you just keep doing that until you've basically chased the imbalance out of the system. I've had people have very interesting experiences with that. I had a woman who was very needle phobic. So she like wanted a 5-element treatment, but didn't want to see what was going on. So she had her eyes closed the whole time. So I did the 5-element thing, chasing the imbalance around. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to just let you rest for like 20 or 30 minutes. I'm right here. Just let me know if you need anything. And then I came to like get her up and I'm like, okay, your treatment's over and you can get up. It's just know it takes 48 hours for the full treatment to take effect. And she's like, I'm not getting up until you take these needles out. I'm like, what needles? She's like, I'm full of needles. I'm like, no, you're not. I just activated the points. That's what you're feeling. She's like, I am not getting up until you take these needles out. I'm like, open your eyes, please. Just open your eyes. She refused to open her eyes. She's like, I don't want to see needles in me. Take them out. I'm like, there's no needles in you. Open your eyes, please. And she finally opened her eyes and she's like, but I feel them. I'm like, no, you feel the points I activated. So yeah, it's very different than TCM.
It's fascinating, but I have a question, with 5-element acupuncture. So you have those points, right? And you find where those kind of the points need to be released. But the network of the meridians, would it be the same as we like learn in Chinese medicine and with the Japanese influence?
It's
or the
partially
meridians?
The same, but there are definitely some differences. So the creator of 5-element acupuncture, or discoverer, is Professor J.R. Worsley, who's in, this is from an institute in Maryland, it looks like, but J.R. Worsley started in Britain, I believe, and he studied the 5 elements from Chinese, Japanese, Korean, like every Asian culture he could, and basically condensed it all into the system. I got the anterior alarm point, CV, and like he discovered a lot of points that we don't even use in TCM. AE points is a powerful treatment. Aggressive energy point, basically. It's just like points in the back, and you're doing it so lightly that the needles can hang. And I've seen some pretty amazing experiences with that. I treated a cousin of mine who was having some issues. She ended up divorcing her husband, but at the time she was still with him. And I gave her one of these aggressive energy treatments, and it was powerful. She burst into tears. Those of us who were like near the open door found ourselves with like tears streaming down our face. And when I went to go pull the needles out of her, her body had sucked all of them down. And if didn't have handles, the body probably would have sucked them in completely. Like there was divots where the needles were. They had been sucked in so deep. And then when I pulled the needles out, she said that like I'd given her life back, and she had a complete change of like personality, went home, divorced the guy, and now is married to an incredible guy, and like really just turned her whole life around just because of that one treatment.
Can you describe the intention of that treatment, aggressive energy?
So in TCM, or sorry, 5 element, this was my well-used clinic book. You start with those kind of treatments where you go to the pulses and you do the points, chasing the imbalance out. But if those kind of treatment, like the person keeps coming back and it's just you keep seeing the same patterns over and over again, that's when you would reach for the aggressive energy. I'm just trying to find the aggressive energy here. But yeah, so the aggressive energy is really just to help like clear out the whole system. It's kind of like a reset button is what I call it. It's been so long since I looked in this book. There's so many techniques like the akabane, which I won't even get into because it's very complicated. You're using incense on the fingertips and toe tips to like find a balance.
And so are the pulses taken in the same place in all the practices?
Yes. There is a slight difference in 5 element pulses because in TCM we have lung, large intestine, spleen, stomach, and then they say triple burner. And then on this side is heart, small intestine, liver, gallbladder, and they call it the sex organ, the pericardium, basically. But then in 5 elements, you actually are splitting the fire into the top and bottom. So here you would have heart and small intestine, and then here at the bottom you'd have triple burner and pericardium. And then this would be wood and water, and then earth and metal. Metal, earth, fire, fire, wood, water. Yeah. Sorry. Complicated. And then in each position too, you're feeling at different levels. So, and you can feel how organs are doing throughout the whole body just with that. And then one of the things that 5 elements doesn't do, but we do in TCM, is look at the tongue. And you can see that it's the map of the whole body. And you can see how the whole body's doing just by looking at the tongue.
And does the tongue respond before and after a treatment?
Yes.
Yes?
We always look at the tongue before. And then when I was a student, just for fun, we would look at the tongue after occasionally. We didn't do it every time, but you could see a major difference. You know. There was one time this person came in, they were having a lot of digestive issues. There was like this thick coat on their tongue, like a yellowish white. And we gave them a treatment, did Mascha on the belly. Like, so fill the belly button with sea salt and do Mascha cones on top of that, just to help warm the whole belly. And when we looked at the tongue again afterwards, the coat was back to normal. So very interesting.
So fast as well.
Yeah, it really is. But I do tell people that it takes up to 48 hours for the full treatment to come through. Like just because the needles are out doesn't mean the treatment's over. Because I've seen in people who come to me for like physical pain, not always, but sometimes like the next day they'll go through like a week's worth of pain in one day, and then the day after that it's gone completely. So sometimes it makes it worse before it makes it better. So that's why I always say give it 48 hours completely before you decide that it didn't work for you.
And then, so at what point do you decide, what's my question here? Do you see this as a quick fix, Jonathan, or is this an ongoing
I
step by
consider
step?
acupuncture kind of like a lifestyle, because I notice the people who do it more regularly tend to, like, when their chi is aligned on a regular basis, they live healthier lives. Like, they just live better lives in general. They just seem to be happier, healthier, just like life is good. People who wait until the last minute and this is the last straw and this is the last thing they're trying, I'm like, I can try and help you, but I mean, I don't know how much you're going to get out of it. It depends on how long that issue's been going on. Because I've had people come to me like as a last resort. I'm like, why didn't you come to me as the first resort? I could have helped you then. Now we're just going to do maintenance at this point because we don't want it getting any worse. But you know, people don't think of acupuncture as medicine. They think of it as like, oh, it's like a massage, but no one touches you. People say that to me. I'm like, it's not exactly the same thing, but okay, if that's how you want to see it.
And what advice do you give to your clients, you know, who come to you, like, well, I guess on a reasonably regular basis for acupuncture? Do you give them like some acupressure points to practice at home, like if they're really unwell, as
I
smaller kind
will.
of supplementary?
I also do ear seeds. So that's vicarious seeds on a little piece of tape. So the ear is seen as an upside down fetus. So it treats the whole body. And what I'll do oftentimes is I'll put ear seeds in that treat whatever's going on and just have them palpitate them like 3 times a day. So, and then I also, you know, I have to give lifestyle advice, being a health coach and everything. And one of the things that is very important in following theory, let me see if I can even get it in the camera there, that in that center there, each organ has a 2-hour block. So they say that if you are going to be in touch with your organs, this clock is how to do it, the organ clock. So like, because your stomach is strongest at 7 to 9 a.m., that's why breakfast is so important. But on the contrary, 7 to 9 p.m. is the worst time to eat because your stomach is at its lowest energy. Which is interesting because that's when most Americans eat their dinner, isn't it?
Yes.
So I always say, as long as you're done eating by 6:30, you're good. A lot of times people have digestive issues. I'm like, well, when are you eating? Oh, around 8 every day. So it's just learning how to listen to the organs, right? The time of the liver is 1 to 3 a.m. So since the liver replenishes the blood, that's like, if you're only going to sleep 2 hours, 1 to 3 a.m. is that time. So, I mean, I could go into every organ here, but it's like each organ has its own set of rules and how to work with it.
Okay, there's quite a few questions in the chat, but I want to ask one question before you hop to those. And that is, so China is a huge country. TCM originated in this massive country with a lot of different climate zones.
Right.
And you live in Hawaii, which is I'm going to say, you know, moderate seasonal changes.
There's
and so pardon? How do you adapt? Yeah. How do you adapt for that? One season versus many seasons.
Well, I mean, even though the seasons here aren't like these big changes, there's still changes. There's still, like, in winter it's cooler than in summer where it's really hot, right? So we still have seasons, they're just not as profound. And the interesting thing about TCM coming from China is that TCM originally was a family thing, right? You're an acupuncturist because your father was an acupuncturist, because his father was an acupuncturist, on and on. One of my Chinese teachers is actually the 32nd master of his family's like style of acupuncture. So it'll be 32 generations worth of acupuncturists going back. And when the communists took over, they were going to eradicate it completely, but then I forget, one of the big five ended up getting healed because of Chinese herbs. So then they got really into it, and they made all the acupuncturists come together, and they're like, okay, you all need to talk, figure out which points it is that you all use. Those are going to be the points. So there's certain points I learned in acupuncture school that was taught to me by my teachers, they learned from their teacher and so on, that you'll never find in any book, because they're family points that were passed down. And a lot of the medicine was switched around because of the communists. Like the 5 elements was huge in TCM, but it got tossed to the side when they brought it all together. So when I was in school, one of the like ongoing running jokes was TCM stands for Traditional Communist Medicine. Because there was a lot of spirituality lost. There was a lot of like family lineages that like the points that they knew got lost. So it's just very interesting that it's a huge country and everyone had their own style, right? And they were forced to come together to create this body of knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you find a clinic that has this perfect balance of the spiritual aspect and the clinical?
You have to shop around. That's what I tell everyone. Is like, once you find an acupuncturist, that's great if you vibe. But if you're not 100% comfortable, you're not like really digging it. There's so many acupuncturists out there. Like, find the one that works for you, right? Find the one who you are in sync with. Find the one that is spiritual versus, I'm scientific and these points are just creating a chemical reaction in the body, right? That's what some acupuncturists think. So shop around. That's the best advice I have for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in North America, there's a website called acufinder.com. You can just type in your area code or zip code and it will pop up the ones near you. But then I found out that you have to actually pay to be on that site. So you're not going to see every acupuncturist in your area on there, but at least it'll get you started. Let's see. I need to scroll back and find some of these questions because I was so busy expressing. I missed the chat. Here's a good one from Well-Tempered Claire. Can the 5 elements be associated with the Tarot Suits Major Arcana? Well, 3 out of the 5 can.
Yeah, but I think it just depends how you look at them, right? Seasons,
Right.
I think I find it's very tricky to really link with what we know, traditionally, I guess, more popular opinion, like one's a spring, right? But I think elements, we can fit them in definitely to like different board cards and the suits. But that's kind of my view, because I try to organize them with seasons, but doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it does. I guess
the
I can probably
seasons of the 5 elements.
The seasons with 5 elements. Well, I guess liver and gallbladder, right, is linked to the spring and the earth element, right? So because in tarot the earth is the pentacles or the coins, right?
Right.
And coins are generally linked. What do you link the pentacles in your tarot? Would it be like autumn?
I personally think
Winter.
summer.
Winter, yeah. You seem like it again. Pentacles can be either. So
there, you talk to everybody, and everyone's going to have different ideas.
Yeah.
Jonathan says summer. I say winter, and you say what, Mascha?
Pentacles, autumn.
Autumn. See, we all see something different.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and then in the 5 elements too, they have 5 seasons, right? So wood is spring, fire is summer, earth is late summer, metal is autumn, and water is winter.
Yeah, and also we can link them with the cycles, right? So the spring and with liver and gallbladder, it's like the birth, the revival, right? Then we're moving into the summer, which is growth, right? So it's kind of our things growing. And then we have the spleen and stomach, which is the earth, and it's kind of maturation, right?
Right.
And then we're moving into the autumn, harvesting. And then we have the storages for the winter and the water, right? And that's the most confusing one probably for me, because kidneys and urinary bladder are linked to the winter and to the water element. When in tarot, it's kind of hard. I guess probably we can agree that cups, most of us will not associate cups with the winter, will we?
But in the chakra system, water is connected to the kidneys and the bladder. It's the second chakra, so that aligns.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's really, really hard to weave these systems together in perfect alignment. There's a few things that cross. Jonathan, can you speak to the Tanden?
The Dantian?
Dantian?
So the Dantian is it's how the body is broken up, basically. So the lower Dantian is from the navel down. The middle Dantian is from your diaphragm to your navel. And then the upper Dantian is above the diaphragm. So you can see where the organs are in relation to the Dantians, right?
So would it be like, would it make sense to sort of like use like almost like 3 chakras, I guess, or 4 chakras for lower dantian? Can we say that it's like the root chakra and the sacral chakra? And of course we have the middle dantian, which will be the heart. And in, I guess in our yoga chakra theory, right, when we look at the heart chakra, it's linked with the lungs as well. Yeah. And then, of course, we have the upper chakra, and that probably will be with Shuddhi, like communication, and the throat chakra. I'm just kind of just speaking as I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, Mascha. And so, but there is no air element in Chinese medicine. So, this is the piece that is the most difficult for me to pull together, is where is the air? And so I'm wondering if the air is just the space. And so that's why I was asking about the fact that each of the elements contains spaciousness, organs that move things. So I'm wondering if it's just unnamed.
Well, air, I don't think was ever really considered an element, because it's just, if you think about it, all of these elements, like, you can see it, right? You can feel it. Whereas air, you can't see you can feel it. But in TCM, I know that wind is considered one of the big evils, right? So for them, air is an evil thing, because it's wind, right? Wind is evil. Wind brings sickness. Anytime you got a cold or a flu, it's a wind cold or a wind heat or a wind dampness or wind dryness.
And it's so interesting that these 5 elements, I'm going to say 4 of the elements, I don't know, like wood. What if we visualize? So I want to go to some of these tarot questions that are in the chat. So when we are looking at the alchemical symbols for earth and water, there's this density and this inextricable link between earth and water. And so wood, earth, metal, and water are dense, whereas fire is not dense.
Right.
And so on the bottom of this pentagram here, the bottom of this 5-element chart, we have 4 dense elements, and then we have a non-dense element, which is really
And it's the one with 4 organs versus the others that have 2.
right.
Yeah.
And the density of those 4 elements really speaks to the lower 3 chakras.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the fire element has those 2 organs that we don't even talk about, it's like this mystery. I don't know. It's really fascinating. So where does the chart begin in Chinese medicine?
Well, it's interesting because technically at birth, we start at metal, and then we go opposite the cycle. And then you're born at water. And then you start going around, right? So you're born at water, you have your springtime, your youth, your summer, your like adulthood, then you're going into your older adulthood, and then you're, passing, because metal is also death. That's why in a lot of Chinese funerals you see everyone wearing white, because it's the color of metal, the color of grief.
Interesting. Where is conception?
Conception is between the water and the metal, but it happens in the metal. Because the metal is also spirit, right?
Say that again.
The metal is also very much spirit. Like metal people tend to be like the kind of the quiet voice that like when they speak, everyone's like listening intently because the wisdom that's just pouring out of them. That's the metal type. Whereas water, we get like depth and mystery with water.
So can you connect the element of metal with the suit of swords?
I could, no.
For me, it makes sense because swords are made of metal, right? So it's kind of,
Right.
yeah. And we
Makes
have
sense.
that characteristic, right, of metal people. Well, when I went to China, it's almost there like those knights in shiny armors, and they kind of, that metal element. So, yeah. And for me also, I guess probably the lungs, metal is connected with lungs in the large intestine. And when I kind of hear lungs, for me, that's the suit of swords. So,
yeah.
Although it's not the air element, right? Because the element is, in Chinese medicine is metal.
Oh, I just saw this question from Well-Tempered Claire. In Ayurveda, do they also check the pulse for the dosha?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And they have marma points as well in Ayurveda. Yeah, they're kind of the pressure points.
Oh, this is an interesting question. Do you know anything about Ben Sao's use of crystals for specific acupuncture? Not crystals, but I have heard of people buying big needles that aren't for like piercing the skin, but they're big gold or silver needles. Usually they come in pairs of gold and silver, and they hold them on the points. Gold for tonifying, silver for sedating. That is an interesting question. Can you look at someone's ears and see imbalances? I can. It's more looking at the tongue for me. The ears, it's just, these are just points. Although it's interesting that I've said it in the past, but the points where most people get their ears pierced is the eye point. Acupuncture treat prefrontal cortex deficiencies such as poor motivation or memory. Yes. There's a type of acupuncture called scalp acupuncture that treat the whole body, just some points on the head. And that's actually one of the specialties in that mentality.
And memory is connected to kidneys, right, as well?
Mm-hmm. No. Kidney is basically, the kidneys power everything. The Jing Qi that you have in your kidneys, you get from your parents, and that's the energy you have for life. And once your Jing Qi is used up, you die.
Mm. So you can maintain it, but you cannot increase it, right?
Correct. That's why a lot of practitioners, they do stuff like qigong with the kidney pounding, or taking ginseng, anything just to help like boost that energy as much as you can in this life, while also not like flooding the system with it, because it's like just a tiny drop of that Jing Qi is all you need for everything.
Mm.
And in Chinese medicine, supposedly, like sex and childbearing will drain your Jing Qi as well. So for men, they're not supposed to ejaculate often because it will drain your Jing Qi. And then women are not supposed to be in childbirth too often because it will drain your Jing Qi.
Mm. And I guess that's probably we can link to the second chakra in yoga, that water element, and our creativity, and yeah.
It's interesting in Western medicine how there's not much conversation about keeping the low back warm and the whole idea of the nourishment of the kidneys, when it's so vital. It's so vital to our health.
And I know so many Chinese practitioners that will refuse to go out unless they have a scarf protecting the back of the neck from the wind, the evil wind.
The evil wind.
That's very intuitive practice for me. Evil winds, even inside.
Yeah, and the Reiki practitioners that I have, masters that I've studied with too, this whole kidney neck, like they talk about shoulders, kidney, shoulders, neck line is so important, and the treating of the back body, which is
well, gallbladder 2, gallbladder 20, behind the ear here. It's like that little knob of bone. There's the point right there. That's where wind tends to enter the body.
Wind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, wind cold tends to enter through here, and then wind heat will come through here. That's why, wind cold, you get the chills and the shakes. And then with wind heat, you're getting like the yellow coming out. Okay. Usually wind cold, you have clear snot. Wind heat, you got the yellow.
So, Jonathan, how does one's dominant element get determined?
So in 5 elements, they say everyone has all 5, of course. But you're born one predominant, and through life, doing like whatever it is you're doing, you can cause a different one to become predominant, right? So I know that some 5 element practitioners consider it like you are one element, you wear the mask of a second element, and you protect yourself with a third element.
That's cool.
So, like, I have a friend who, she's very like fiery and like loving, but she says she's really earth, wearing a fire mask and protecting herself with metal.
So as a practitioner, how do you determine what the dominant element is?
Part of it is just the sound of their voice, what kind of emotions they tend to lean towards, the odors that you smell off them on a regular basis. Let's see, that's basically it. And then just working with them, you get to like, once the imbalances start like getting fixed, then you start seeing them for who they are, basically. Because you don't have those imbalances masking things anymore.
Right.
But I know that when I was in my clinical classes, my teacher said that a third of the time you'll know exactly what element they are. A third of the time you'll be like between 2, and a third of the time you just won't have any idea until you've worked with them for a while. And certain people, it's just like, no matter how much you work with them, it's just like, I just don't know.
Okay. I was trying to find that chart you sent us with the odors because that's fascinating. Because I think we could learn a lot about our own wellness if our perception of the odors was in tune.
So wood is rancid.
And so, can you describe them in the way that you perceive them?
So rancid, the wood rancid is kind of like that smell you get of like, you've had a vase of flowers and they're starting to wilt and there's just that like kind of rancid smell you get from them. That's what I think of as the wood smell. Fire is scorched. So if they smell like a campfire, even though they haven't been around a campfire, they're definitely fire types. And earth is fragrant. So like, but not necessarily in a good way. It's more like how the compost is fragrant. Metal just smells rotten. I was like a rotten apple kind of smell. And then water is supposedly putrid, like rotting fish. And these are all like really negative. The thing is that it's like it's a subtle smell, but it's like, how would you describe it? And these are the way that they describe the elements as far as smell. Because what they're looking for is an imbalance. And if you're imbalanced, then that particular smell is going to be stronger than the ones that are imbalanced.
Okay. And I have another really weird question. How
Yes.
much is lost in translation?
Oh, probably so much. I mean,
It's a good question.
yeah. I mean, just talking about Sanjiao, like Sanjiao. Is it the triple burner? Is it the triple energizer? The triple warmer? Like, how does it translate? It translates into all of those. So it's like the concept of Sanjiao, like if a Chinese person hears the word Sanjiao, they know exactly what I'm talking about. But a Westerner is like, Sanjiao? And I go, oh, it's a triple energizer. What? So, I mean, there's definitely. Plus, like I said, with the communists kind of like coming in and taking control of the whole situation, I'm sure there's a ton of things lost just from being ousted.
But it's
you're
wonderful
the only
though.
one who uses that point? Well, that point's obviously not important, even though it can cure cancer or whatever. Just as an example.
Okay, so this thing of smell is really, really interesting because, like death has a smell, right? Death has a smell. Different types of body odors or oral.
Metal would be that death smell.
Yeah, metal would be the death smell. Okay. And then we have the odors that are emitted through the mouth, the skin, the sweat. I mean, the sweat smells different than the odor that's been collecting in the armpits or in other places in the body, right?
So I was told the place to smell is right here at the base of the neck because it's the one spot that most people don't wash. So it's going to be the most sincere scent. Like it's going to be their true scent versus like soap or perfume or deodorant or something. So that spot right there is where the smell usually comes from. And like I said, we didn't ask people to smell them. We just said, okay, it's time to get changed. And then we waited in the hall and the teacher's like, okay, walk in, everyone sniff. We'll talk about it later. And then we went in, talked to the person. We'd be like, okay, we're going to go have a conference and we'll be back. And we go back to the conference room and talk about, and everyone would talk about the smell or like how the person's actions made them think of a certain metal or a certain element or whatever. So it was definitely interesting because it's not something you want. Can I sniff the back of your neck? It's not something you're going to ask anybody. So,
okay. Have you done acupuncture on Apollo?
I have not.
Okay.
I did some acupressure when he was having growing pains, but I haven't done the needles on him. He's a little too young. His age group is usually the type that like don't leave needles in. It's that same idea of needle in, get the chi sensation, needle out.
So when is acupuncture prescribed? From what age?
They suggest you be at least 12 before you start receiving acupuncture. I mean, you can get acupuncture when you're younger, but it's, like I said, it's pediatric acupuncture, which is different. It's that in and out kind of idea, because, squirmy kids with needles in them.
I love Kristen's comment. Wait, so everyone out of balance stinks?
Well, it's not stink. It's just a specific smell, and they use very negative words for the smells, but it's just a way of describing the smell. And it's not that you stink. It's just there's certain smells. There's 5 different smells that you can get.
Yeah, and I guess the wording is all about, as Sadhana mentioned, lost in translation. It's very cultural in Chinese to be like so direct, and probably like some of the words, if you translate them directly. Yeah, and they would well, I taught English, so the students will just talk to you like that, right? But they don't mean anything. They don't mean to be impolite or rude or negative at all. It's just the language and how it translates directly, but it's not how it's like, how... I guess it's not how it really sounds to the Chinese people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, most of my teachers in acupuncture school are Chinese, and wow, I had no filters.
Yeah. But again, they're probably most respectful the way they talk to you, but they just translate right. from their language into direct English, right? So they just try to find that the alternative in English language for what they want to say. Yeah.
I think that's why when we go into a different modality, or we're as a client, we're the receiver, and we go to a different modality, we need to be really open and non-judgmental, because there's wisdom in every modality, and sometimes it's very culturally challenging to be in that.
I'm putting up this comment by Gerald because it's just too funny. So Rochelle apparently asked her husband to smell that area, and he said it just smelled like perfumey. Well, that could be because, long hair draping over it, you're getting the shampoo smell rubbed in. Yeah, basically. Nobody wants to be told their rank. Nobody does. It's true. Well, that's why we do it in a way where it's not like, we subtly do it. We're not going to be, I'm going to sniff the back of your neck now. It's just, please get changed. I'll be back in a few minutes. And when you come to the door, you just go, okay.
So, Jonathan, how does this influence you when you're doing readings for people?
Well, part of it is I have to have a little bit of a disconnect between Tarot and the 5 elements, because Tarot uses a different system of elements, right? And I guess, everything kind of comes together when you're doing readings anyway. So I think it does influence me. It's just in subtle ways that I don't really have words for, because I think of the 4 elements when I'm doing TCM. I mean, Tarot. Whereas when I'm doing TCM, it's 2 different hats, basically. But I mean, I've also been given readings before where it's like, 10 of Swords keeps coming up for this person. They're not in grief. They're not having a mental problem. And I'm like, you're being asked to go get acupuncture. And they go and get acupuncture. Like, oh my God, that was exactly what it was.
That's for me, 10 of Swords card it's acupuncture.
Often I just read it as an acupuncture card. I have done I Ching. I have the coins and I have the books. I haven't really played with it as much as TCM or other modalities like runes. Oh, this is interesting. I can tell when someone from my family will be sick smelling their head. I never thought about that before, just did. There's definitely a shift in scent when someone's getting sick. What happens if you have poor olfactory nerves and lack smell? Then how do you define your client? Well, there's sounds, there's colors. Like if you look here, you can see different colors on people. Like on me, it's very red. So I think I wear a fire mask, even though I am probably either water or metal. That was the two that my teachers always kept going back and forth between, was water or metal for me.
Mm.
The water has kind of a groaning voice. The metal has a little bit of a weepy voice.
What kind of voice do Mascha and I have?
I'd say your voice is probably metal, is my guess, because it's not fast. You take your time with your words, and you're not speaking loud. You're just speaking, which is very metal, right? Which is also very tied into spirituality and stuff. Metal people tend to be very spiritual. Mascha, I think, has a very fiery voice. Like there's always that hint of a laugh in her voice. Right? So I'd say Mascha has fire. Probably pericardium, because she's got the pericardium eyes. Is my nose specially adapted and tuned to your acupuncture? I guess. I never really thought of it. I do have a really strong sense of smell, though. It's true.
But I guess with practice, probably you also fine-tune your description of different smells of the clients as well.
Right. Right. Like instead of rancid, you could just say, smells like rotten flowers. That sounds a little better than rancid.
I used to wait tables, and you know that smell when the flowers have been in the vase too long, and it's just, that is such an awful smell.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's that earth smell. So when I'm saying that you have that smell, I'm not saying it's like it's so super strong that everyone around you can smell it. It's just when you're in an enclosed room and your smell kind of like fills the room. That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
You
So
like,
what is this?
like
What is the
close
smell
enough
of
to someone.
ketosis?
Ketosis, exactly.
What smell is that?
That is usually earth. I mean, a wood one because it's connected to liver, gallbladder, right? The liver attacking liver attacking kidney, I think, is ketosis. So you're gonna have kind of like rotten wood mixed with rotten fish kind of smell.
So, and I laugh because it's like, this is all, if you start to follow one somebody on YouTube that's talking about I don't know, like intermittent fasting or something, like ketosis is huge. Like people are wanting ketosis, right? To lose weight and burn fat and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, it's such a rancid smell.
That's what the keto diet is.
Yeah, and it's such a horrible smell. It's such a horrible smell. Yeah.
Selkie says that both of you have healing sounding voices.
Thank you, Selkie.
see. Oh, Rochelle wants to know what kind of voice she has. I'd say you have a wood voice because it's like it can get loud and animated, right? So, and I don't know if you've ever been accused of sounding angry before, but that's another wood sound. She says yes. Oh, this is an interesting question. How do incenses, oils, and other scents impact your health? That's what the essential oil health kick is all about, really. I mean, rubbing the oils on so they sink into your body and you can smell them. It's the smell and the oil themselves that really, I mean, the incense, I mean, think about how often you burn Palo Santo to like clear a space, right? So I think it's very important. That's why I always tell someone who's going to be cleaning with like bleach or something, make sure the entire house is open and you might want to wear a mask. Rochelle says they all have big voices in their families. The only way to be heard because there were so many always in the same room. Oh, so Tony, there's a reason why the oils change smell when you put them on. They're reacting to your body chemistry. So the oil is going to smell different. So if each of us put on the same lavender oil, each of us would have a different scent no matter what. Right? So all the oils are going to interact with your body chemistry and change in flavor, so to speak. Oh my goodness, we've been over an hour, haven't we? I feel like we barely scratched the surface. Let me just cover a few books real quick. So J.R. Worsley wrote this, Acupuncture, Is It For You? And I had this in my waiting room for a long time. It's just like questions and answers for acupuncture for anyone who's interested. Back to this real quick so I can hold up the books. This was written by my first 5-element teacher, archetypal acupuncture healing 5 elements, Gary Dolovich. And this one's interesting because he relates the different 5 elements, the different characters, and the oh my god, I'm having a brain fart. Seinfeld. So the different characters in Seinfeld are the different elements, right? And this is the book like explaining why they are the different elements. So, this, I don't know if you're even going to be able to find anywhere. This was through my clinic that I was able to get this. And this is the 5-element acupuncture handbook. And this is basically like treatments and treatments and more treatments. So, and then finally, this one is kind of an expensive book. I bought it because it was one of my textbooks. And that's Nourishing Destiny, The Inner Tradition of Chinese Medicine, Lonnie S. Jared. It's a tome, but in here he goes through each of the elements and each of the personalities of the organs. So like one of the things in 5-element stuff is like, okay, you're a fire, but what fire are you? Are you the heart, small intestine, triple burner, pericardium? Because each one has a different personality. So I could see trying to map the personalities to the court cards, except there's 12 and 16, so there's 4. There'd be 4 missing, or you'd have to double up. And then this one is a slightly different take on 5 elements. It's the 5 elements, 10 stems by Kiko Matsumoto and Stephen Birch. Much glare on this one. But these were my main texts when I was in school. This one was the text for a class called deepening into the officials. So we basically, all we did was each week we'd study one of the organs as like a personality and their energy type, personality. Yeah. Do you have any more questions for me?
I do not. Not for today.
I'm just curious, what personality are you in 5 Elements, Jonathan?
So my teachers kept going back and forth between water and metal. For the longest time, they thought I was a pericardium because I have those pericardium eyes.
So fire.
But I think I'm actually metal, just because the majority of my health issues have always been like either lungs or large intestine related, or skin, which is also connected to the lungs. So I think I would be a metal with a fire mask, and I protect myself with water.
And so eyes have a organ. Oh, okay.
Each of our orifices on our face are connected to a specific organ.
Because eyes are liver, right? Because we can see the health of the liver in the eyes. Yeah.
Large intestine. The ear is the kidney. The nose is the lungs. Mouth is earth and metal. Right? Stomach and large intestine. And then the tongue is the flower of the heart. So, yeah.
So inspiring. I want to learn more now.
I think I want to buy that big black book.
Yeah, me too. Like go for the largest one.
No, this book is definitely worth it. It has so much knowledge in here. Lonnie Jared is like, I don't even have words for him. He's just so amazing. He probably is one of the people that most acupuncturists like want to learn from, just because he's got so much knowledge. And he went and he got his doctorate in acupuncture in China itself. So he speaks Chinese, and it's an amazing book. And it even has some amazing charts in here too. And I'm not going to get into it because it would take way too long.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us today, Jonathan.
Of course, yeah. If you can only get one book, get this one. Of course, I bought it for $95 and it was on sale. So I think the price is about $150 for this book. No. Just to warn you.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you, everybody. And if you have any questions, just throw them in the comments below, and I'll answer them as I can. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming on and joining me for this chat.
Thank you so much for sharing and inspiring us, Jonathan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone who came today. This has been amazing, and I flew by. I can't believe how fast it went. So, thank you, and I will see you in about 45 minutes over on Tarot Stash for a lesson in crystals. Aloha and